Alright, hello everyone, this is Jake from NETRONIC, and we are going to talk about the 10 most useful features of visual scheduling in 10 minutes. So it's going to be a quick video, hopefully also a very content-rich and useful video for those of you using the visual scheduling suite. So, my name is Jake. I work here in business development at NETRONIC, and I will be your presenter today. And I'm going to switch from the PowerPoint into my NAV environment so we can run through the top 10 features of visual scheduling. So, first, we have 3 products that we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to use 2 of those products to show you the 10 features. We have the Visual Production Scheduler, Visual Jobs Scheduler, and Visual Services Schedulers. And this is our visual scheduling suite of products, which are specifically made to integrate and live and breathe inside of Microsoft Dynamics NAV. And the first feature we're going to talk about is able to be shown in the Visual Production Scheduler. And what we want to talk about is that we gain a complete overview of all of your data from NAV. And we can see that here as I open up the VPS, or the Visual Production Scheduler, that I have a complete glimpse and look at all of my firm planned, and release production orders, basically everything that's going on across production. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about what is being shown on the Gantt chart in just a minute, but for this point, what I really want to show is that we're gaining a nice visual front end or a visual face to your NAV data without making any changes to the data. And this is a really critical point to understand, that we don't make any changes to your NAV data that's being pulled in, okay? And this way, you really gain the truest picture about what your data looks like in NAV. Okay, and then as I come in here to my second point, you can see I'm already doing it a little bit, in that I can very easily scroll with the mouse wheel across the screen. Actually, let me expand out my view here for you guys. So you can see that I have a time span that I've defined. Okay, maybe I can see it a little better here. I have an amount of time that I've defined, which is based off of my working date, which is essentially today's date. And I can redefine this based off my starting and ending date. So from the working date, or today's date, I can go, for example, -1 week or out 1 month. Let's say I want to change that to maybe be a different time frame. So I'm going to do back 3 days and out 3 weeks. I'm going to select OK. I'm going to reload the data. Okay, and now you can see from my working date, I'm looking -3 days, so back 3 days, and I'm looking out 3 weeks. Okay, and very easily I can choose a day. So let's say I wanted to really gain some insight into the 1st of January, or I'm sorry, into the 1st of February. Then I can see here on the 1st of January, I can zoom in with my mouse wheel and increase my granularity. And I can do this all the way down into 5-minute intervals. Okay? And this functionality of the easy timescale scrolling with the mouse wheel can be done across all of the products of the entire suite. And this brings us into our third point, actually, so our third feature, which is the full integration we have with NAV, so with standard NAV. And we can see that here, if I have, let's say, a production order, or production order line. And let's say I want to jump into that production order and see what's going on inside of it. I can very easily, with a double click on any of the operations inside the Gantt chart, open up the corresponding production order card. Okay. And this is going to be exactly the routings like we know from NAV. Okay. So with setup runtimes, the operations, this is the routing that I'm visualizing here. Same thing if I wanted to jump in here to the assembly department and see what's going on in the work center or machine center level, I can do that as well. Okay, now for our next points, I'm going to jump actually into, I'm going to leave the production scheduler and come in here to the job scheduler, the visual job scheduler, just so we can get a sense for what another product would look like. So with the visual job scheduler, similar to the visual production, I'm just pulling in and loading in all of my jobs currently that I have in the jobs module. Okay. And what I want to talk about here with these points is going to be the different views or perspectives we have. So in this first view, when we open up the VJS or the Visual Jobs Scheduler, okay, this is really our time-centric view. So we're seeing very nicely the timing around a job, when a job is going to begin or supposed to begin, and when it's supposed to end. We can see, for example, the underlying job tasks, and therefore the job planning lines. Okay. Now you'll see some other things on the screen that I'm not going to go into detail here about, but if you want to know about them, for example, these milestone markers, please look back at past webinars. I have talked about them. But key to understanding here is that we're looking at a very time-centric point of view to see what's happening in regards to when was my job supposed to start, when will it finish, am I completing my job tasks and my job planning lines on time. You can see here that I can drill down into the job planning lines. Okay. And that brings us into our next point, namely that we also have a resource view. Okay. So here I'm switching the perspective from a time-centric view to a resource-centric view. And now you can see I have all my resources, okay, listed out here. I can see the resource groups and the individual resources. I can see who's doing what, for how long and when. Right? And this is really where I can be a little more flexible with regards to dragging and dropping things around, creating reallocations or reassigning work onto different resources, and we'll come back to that in just a minute. And then finally, when it comes to the views, what's also of great importance is understanding your capacity. So you can see here that as I scroll across the screen, I can also fixate on a single resource. I can see a resource's daily capacity. I can see how much of that capacity is being used at a given time. And I can see, for example, where there's too much work assigned to that resource at a certain time, so where that resource's capacity is overloaded. Okay. So not only do we have this resource capacity chart being shown at the bottom of the screen, but we also have a view dedicated to looking at capacities, which is our histogram view here. Okay. And you can have this also in production as well as in jobs. And you see that I have a complete overview of my resource groups and my individual resources, what their daily capacity is, where that daily capacity is free, and where it's being utilized, even where there's overcapacities occurring. Okay. So this is really nice to be able to see, okay, very easily, very quickly, who has free capacity and who doesn't. Right? And then, of course, within all of the schedulers, you're going to have a filtering capability, and this is going to be feature number 8. so I can configure certain filters. Okay, so let's say I want to filter on a given resource group and only focus on that resource group. So right now I just want to focus on my electricians. I'm going to create that filter, I'm going to activate that filter, and now I'm able to drill down and only focus on what's going on within my electricians group. Right? You can also set other filters. So for example, let's say I'm going to filter on a given employee qualification. So I want to find all of my employees who are fluent in German, for example. So I'm going to filter on its qualification code for German. I'm going to activate the filter, and now you see I now gain a view of all my employees that meet that qualification code. Okay, and we touched on this a little bit, but for feature number 9, and this is really the essence of, I think, visual scheduling across production jobs and services, is the ability to easily drag and drop from one resource to another, for example. So I can see here that I have an allocation, for example, on a given resource. Or let's do it here rather. Let's say I have, throughout different resources, I have multiple allocations that have been made, and this resource has maybe too much work assigned to it. So I can then take this work and reassign it to alternative resources. Vice versa, I can grab from the resource group, right? So let's say I have a bulk amount of time that's been assigned to the overall resource group, and I want to actually be able to share that work down across multiple resources. I can very easily come and drag this down to share it across multiple resources, right? And this is really where visual scheduling can save clicks as opposed to reallocating work throughout NAV, as well as give you the visibility and the agility to quickly make changes and informed decisions when scheduling throughout your production jobs or services. And last but not least, when we come to feature 10, and that should bring us right up to the 10-minute mark, is the fact that everything I'm doing here as far as dragging and dropping and making changes, this is actually a simulation, because what I'm doing is opening up pulling in all of the data from NAV and seeing what my situation actually is in NAV, but I'm not actually saving any of that back until I select save here in the upper left. So what this means is that I have the ability or the chance to first simulate changes that I want to make, and then finally, as I decide that I want to commit those changes back to NAV, I can then come up here and save data. Or if I don't want to commit them, I can reload the data, and then I can start over and more or less re-simulate. Okay? All right, so as a recap, we looked at 10 features for the visual scheduling suite and how visual scheduling, what its top 10 features are. We looked at getting the overview, so the complete look across your NAV data. We looked at the easy timescale scrolling with your mouse wheel. We looked at the double clicking easily into corresponding NAV cards. Okay. We looked at the time-centric view. So a couple different views in the schedulers. First one is time-centric. The second is a resource view, in which case we talked only about the resources being shown, but also about their capacities being shown. And then we switched over into the histogram view. And then for the 8th feature, we looked at filtering. Okay, so filtering on different criteria within the scheduler. For 9th, we did easy reallocation of resources. So I was dragging and dropping across multiple resources. Okay, easily reallocating right on the schedule. And finally, for the feature number 10, is the ability to first simulate movements, simulate changes before you need to save it and commit it back into NAV. And with that, we've gone through the 10 most useful features of visual scheduling in 10 minutes. Please, if you have questions, feel free to email me at the email shown here, or check us out further at www.netronic.com. Thank you for the time today, and talk to you soon. Please check out our upcoming webinars and sign up for those and for the ones that are of most interest to you. Thanks.